Here are some more videos from our stair building education series. Let's go ahead and get started with our first video. Here is another video series that I plan on making more videos on, and that will be about trimming out the stairway, kind of finishing out a variety of different stairways. So if you have any ideas for videos or questions you have, like the individual who sent me one recently, then feel free to email them to me or leave them in the comment area. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started with a couple of ideas that you can use when you have a skirt board, and some boards that are going to be the same width as the skirt board, 3/4 of an inch around the landing. And you can always miter the corners. Just kind of go around here, and you can see how everything dies in, even at the bottom where the skirt board is even with the edge of the wall here. And then we're going to have some floor trim that will just kind of go around here, and the floor trim here will die into the edge of the skirt board here. Next up, let's go ahead and remove one of the walls so it doesn't block our view. And this area here is going to be the main focus of this video, and hopefully I'll be able to provide him and you with a few suggestions that might work for you if you run into this problem. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other side here. And if you're dealing with a situation where the newel post is a little further this way and the skirt board extends out, I still don't think you're going to have a problem using this method here. And for this example here, we're simply going to use the boards again that are the same width, same thickness as the skirt boards for the base boards. And then I'm going to cut some trim boards in here. That will be the distance between the newel post and the other side of the skirt board, or the thickness of the drywall or the wall finish. And in this example here, I'm just going to hold these up 1/4 of an inch. And again, you can miter these angles also. And I'm only using these to provide us with another detail or design. You could always use different types of trim, as long as somehow they represent the thickness of this area here. You want it to be dying into this area here for this example. Another thing you could do would be to extend this portion of the trim a little higher. And again, we're using this piece here to die into the wall to create an even or flat surface and a nice transition between the pieces. And as I said, you could always miter the corners. You want to look a little nicer, and extend the length even higher if that's going to work for you. Next up, let's go ahead and add some cove molding. And I'm going to have the reveal here the same. We're going to have 1/4 of an inch reveal here, 1/4 of an inch reveal here. And you can see where all of this stuff is making a nice transition into everything. And then transitioning down the top of the skirt board. So not a bad looking design here. And again, just in case you missed it, we can always make these trim boards here wider if we need to, depending upon the thickness of the wall and the thickness of the newel post. And if you want the trim to go up the other side, you can always do something like this. And all I'm doing here is extending this trim board here and then adding the molding. So another nice detail. And again, we're keeping all of this 1/4 of an inch reveal here. And if you don't like the square corners, you could always grab a router and round these corners off, providing another nice detail. And in our next example, this is another way that I have seen plenty of finish carpenters use to finish something like this. And that would be to not use any wood trim and kind of leave this area as it is. Leave it alone, and then have the top of the skirt board even with the top of the landing. So again, another way to finish it. And of course, the reason why I was inspired to make this video in the first place. The individual who sent me this question originally had a problem with this right here and suggested that the framing carpenters cut this off. And when they cut it off, they didn't cut it off nice and square. It looked a little odd, almost like they took a Sawzall and cut it, not worrying about how it was going to finish. something like this might work, where you match the top of the skirt board up with the floorboard here. However, I do realize that a lot of finished carpenters don't like that because the direction of the grain changes. And for some of you perfectionists, finished carpenters out there, that is not going to cut it. And I get it. These are just suggestions. They are not the only ways to fix something like this. Now, here is my suggestion to the individual. Why not cut a board, shape a board, and then add it to the top, something like this, and then finish the rest of the stairway off? And then you could use one of the methods in the previous examples. However, it's going to look better if it matches. You have the same wood here as you have here. And if you don't like that idea, stay tuned. I still have a couple of more ideas. And again, when you add all of this stuff here, I really don't know how noticeable this piece is going to be. And if that's the case, something like this might work better. Just bring something out to the edge here, and then run your trim around it. And again, all we're doing here is getting creative. And some of the best finished carpenters out there are extremely creative and can make a variety of different mistakes look great. Now let's get back to the original question where the top of the skirt board wasn't cut straight. And if that's the case, then this idea might not work well. And I do understand you could always take this piece here and shape it to fit in this area. So that would be another option also. However, it's not going to create a nice straight line here. And if that's the case, you can always add another trim board. And even though I have a larger one here, you can always use a smaller one and one that is shaped, maybe rounded at the top, rounded at the bottom, and then run the trim around the base of the entire landing to make it look like it was all part of the original design. Now, it doesn't need to run all the way down the stairway, but it does need to finish into something. And if you don't like this right here, then you're going to have to match the side. Have this one on this side the same as the one on the other side. And again, you can always use something smaller here. And I think in reality, for a situation like this, and like most of the situations you're going to have doing finished carpentry, and I think what most finished carpenters are trying to do will be to cover something by using another piece of trim or create a surface that is going to make a flat, smooth transition without any gaps, or you're going to need to fill it. And this is my final suggestion. And that would be to cut the top of the skirt board somehow to where it is nice and flat. And then you could use the same wood or a different type of wood to create a nice transition here and fix this mistake. So again, we're either going to fill something or cover it to fix a mistake like this most of the time. Here is another video requested by a couple of our viewers who wanted to know if the nosing, the stair tread nosing, or the overhang, something like this, is a legal requirement. And I have not came across a building code yet that has suggested that it is. However, feel free to leave the building code reference number if you have it for your city, county, state, country, whatever it is, and I'll be glad to check it out. But as far as I know, there are no building codes or, in my opinion, reasons why you couldn't build a safe set of stairs without a nosing. Now, another thing I would like to suggest is that you take a look at stairs built in your area. If you're not going to contact your local building department, especially a building with new stairs, because that will tell you that these buildings were built with newer building codes. And if you notice that all of the stairs in your areas have nosings, including those built out of masonry and concrete, then your stairway might require a nosing also. In this video, I will be providing you with a few different methods you can use to figure out a 30-degree angle for your winder stairway. In other words, a winder stairway, one section of the winders that is going to have 3 steps with a 90-degree angle at the center point where the lines are going to come off of these lines here, this line here at 30 degrees. And if you notice these measurements here, the measurement from this part to this part, and from this part to this part are exactly the same, along with the measurements from this point to this point and from this point to this point. So if you have a 4-foot square, you can simply use these measurements instead of the last method I'm going to provide you with. After we take a look at our square that is going to have 3-foot measurements on each side, and again, you can take a look at the measurements here that are exactly the same. And last on our list, we will use a 2-foot square with these measurements here. And the reason why I'm providing you with a 2-foot square, even though this isn't going to work for most stairways, is that we can usually insert our 2-foot square into another square that has larger measurements, like this one right here. So here we have a smaller square inside of a larger square where we can lay out this point here and this point here in this square, and then simply extend these lines out to the point where we need them to be. Or we can use our 3-foot square with our 3-foot measurements also, and simply grab a straight edge like a level and then line it up with our line here so that we can continue this line to the desired point. And we can always check the measurements to make sure that they are the same after we have extended the lines, to make sure that they are exactly the same or close enough for your tolerance. So to provide a brief summary of what we've done so far, we've just simply grabbed a smaller square where we know what the measurements are and extended a line from the center point to our new location to provide us with a 30-degree angle. Next up, let's just go ahead and provide you with a couple of things that you might think would work. And one of those would be to measure across at a diagonal and divide everything up equally. And you can see here where this measurement and this measurement are exactly the same. However, the one in the center is not, for those of you thinking that it might be when it isn't. However, we can use another method that I found while doing some research for this video, and that would be to use a 2-foot radius and simply draw a curved line. And then from this point here, we're going to draw another 2-foot curved line using this line right here as our center point. So not too difficult. And for those of you who need more information on how you can draw a curved line, I do have another video on that. And I will put a link in the video description area to that video. So now that we have this right here, let's go ahead and draw another circle with a 2-foot radius. Now you don't need to go all the way around. Same thing with this. You just need to get to the intersecting points, which would be here, here, and here. Because next up, all we need to do is connect the dots here. If we can draw a straight line from this point right here through this intersecting point where the circles are intersecting with each other, and that would look something like this. Now, once we have this line, we can simply measure the distance from here to here and transfer it over to here. To play connect the dots again and draw a line through here, providing us with 3 30-degree angles. We have a 90-degree angle. If we divide that by 3, we're going to get 3 30-degree angles. And in my opinion, it can't get much simpler than this. Here is a building code that changed in the International Residential Code Books in 2021, and you would need to check with your local building department to see if they are going to enforce it. And that code is suggesting that if you have any treads smaller than 11 inches, then you will need to install a nosing on those steps. And I have built over 1,000 sets of stairs in my career and can tell you that most of the time we used a 10-inch tread measurement along with a 1-inch overhang, providing us with an 11-inch step. And for those of you who are a little confused, we're still going to have a 10-inch tread. And I do have other videos on that, but the building code measures the tread from the farthest protruding point on the step above to the farthest protruding point in the step below. So we're still going to have a 10-inch tread, and that can usually be seen when you're laying out or designing the stairway. So here we have 60 inches and 6 steps. However, if you make the steps 11 inches wide, now we're going to have 66 inches down here, then you won't need a nosing. And that's basically what this new building code is suggesting. So I am going to put the building code reference number in the video description area so you can look it up on your own. However, if I am breaking any copyright laws, I will be removing that. So if you do go to check it out in the video description area and you don't find anything, that's because I had to remove it. And you will have to look it up on your own. And I would suggest contacting your local building department or local building code enforcement inspectors to verify whether or not they are going to use this particular exemption. Here's something you are not going to see every day, and I believe this is about the first time I ever witnessed it. Someone sent me a picture, and it looks something like this. The edge of the landing, the front nosing, was located about in the middle of the doorway, and in reality it needs to come out to the edge of the door, and of course that would depend upon the width of the door. I think most building codes require a minimum of 36 inches, 3 feet in both directions, but of course that would change if you had a door, and I'm not familiar with those building codes. But realistically, the only way you're going to fix something like this will be to shorten the width or the depth of each individual step. And it's the only way I could think of fixing something like this. And it would be up to you to figure out if it's going to be even worth changing. And because sometimes you are going to create a bigger problem by, having a tread that might be a little smaller than approved by the building code. So you're basically trying to solve one problem, make the landing a little longer. But if you don't have enough room, you're going to be creating another problem by making the steps a little smaller or the risers a little taller. So let's just go ahead and take a look at what we got here. You can see here, these are 10-inch treads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we would have 70 inches between the face up of the landing at the top and the face of the lower tread if we drew a horizontal line. I'll show you more what I'm talking about there in a second. So this right here will give us 7 more inches. 7 steps. We take 1 inch off of each step, and we now have a 9-inch tread. This is an illegal tread according to most building codes, but you would need to verify that in your community or through your local building and safety department. If you're looking for a method to fix something like this, you don't want to tear apart the stairs, you could simply add incremental sections to the front of each step to create the new stairway. So we're at 7 inches here. We would need to add a 7-inch piece to the top and only a 1-inch piece here. You would add 1 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches, and 7 inches to the front of the stairs to eliminate cutting a new set of stairs or building a new stairway. So something like this might work. Again, I'm just kind of throwing out an idea here. Something else you might want to do would be to remove one of these steps. So we have 7 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 5 foot 10 inches, which is 70 inches. And if we simply make it a little smaller, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps, if we can eliminate a step, but that would increase the riser height then that might be another option. But of course, this would involve tearing apart the stairway and rebuilding it. Now for the bad news, I would imagine that your stairway was built that way for a reason, and you might not have enough room to build a stairway that's going to meet local building codes. So let's just go over the building codes. 7 3/4 of an inch is usually the maximum height for each individual riser. And the depth is usually going to be 10 inches for a residential set of stairs for a private dwelling. Now, you would need to check with your local building department to verify that information. And I hate to say this, I wouldn't bring this to your building department's attention. I wouldn't say, you know what, I've got a problem here, because they could make you do some work here. So I'll leave it up to you whether or not you want to bring it to their attention. I have known people who have brought stuff like this to their attention, and it's cost them thousands of dollars. But I'll leave it up to you. You want to leave something unsafe or you want to fix it, do it right. That will be your final decision. Now, here's the distance I was talking about when I was asking the person in the email to measure between the doors. You know, if you have enough room here, this will determine your tread size and how many treads you'll be able to use. If you have 70 inches here, then you're going to be able to put 7 steps. If you have 60 inches, but you need 7 steps, you're probably not going to be building a safe stairway. So I think I've driven that point home enough. You would need to do all the calculations. If you need more help, I do have more videos on that, and a book on how to build a straight set of stairs that might be helpful. Of course, you might need the book, How to Build a Set of Stairs with a Landing, for this one. Here's another outdoor stairway I come across and wonder why it was built that way, but understand that most of us look at something and they think, you know what, that's easy to build and that's a great idea, I'm going to do it the same way, and that's fine. But I'd like to put a little insight, or at least share my opinion with you for this particular stairway. And it's quite simple. It's just built out of boxes. Usually, I've seen people use railroad ties actually for this. 6x6s, 6x8s. These are 4x8s. They're 3.5 inches wide by 7.5 inches wide to keep the step at 7.5 inches. That's the maximum for most building codes will be 7 3/4 inches. If you're doing it for someone who has a difficult time walking up the stairs, you might want to use a 4x6. You might want to use something that's a little smaller, maybe 5.5 inches instead of 7.5 inches. And of course, there's a bottom view of it. Another view, give you an idea, just boxes stacked on top of boxes and filled with dirt. So in this particular stairway, this is just filled with dirt. I do not like this design because when it gets wet, and depending on the dirt, if it's sand, it's going to be difficult to keep in here. Sand's going to just spread all over the place. And if you get sand on the edge of this and you're walking down or walking up the stairway a little faster than normal, this is going to be slippery. I do not like sand. And if you're going to fill it with dirt, you're going to run into the problem when it gets wet. This stuff's going to be slippery, and of course, you're going to be tracking it all over the place. So dirt, not a big fan of. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a few more products: gravel, metal, tile, pavers, wood, and concrete. And of course, gravel is, well, you see this a lot. People fill it with gravel. And again, I understand this is easy to do. Build your square box out of wood, stack them on top of each other, and fill them with gravel. I see this a lot. Gravel is going to be difficult to walk on. You walk up and down a stairway in bare feet with gravel, you're not going to want to do it again. Not a big fan of that. Someone runs up the stairway, they're going to knock some of the gravel around. You're going to be filling it with gravel every once in a while, or refilling it. Metal, not really a big fan of that. And of course, you're not going to see this. I just kind of threw it out there for someone who thought, you know, hey, I need a different look. Metal over time could rust, but of course you could get some metals, maybe stainless steel or something galvanized that's going to last a little longer. And this one here is tile. And if you're going to use tile, you're going to have to fill it with concrete. You're going to have something, some type of a base that the tile is going to adhere to. And most of the time that's going to be concrete for an exterior stairway. So if you're going to use something like tile, why not fill it all the way to the top with concrete and use some type of a decorative pattern, a stamp or something that they use to make the concrete a little nicer. And of course, pavers. Now, pavers would bring us back to the gravel. This is going to be something that will be a little easier to do. And if you were going to design a stairway using pavers, I would also recommend to build your boxes to where you can use pavers to where you won't have to do a lot of cutting. So you could see this wouldn't be that good of a width or a length. If this was a little smaller, then you would just have these here. So if you can kind of keep it in a pattern like this, that would work better. And of course, wood. You think about it, this is going to be wood. You could always fill this with wood, and I think you would be okay. And if you were going to use wood and wood, wood for the box and wood for the steps, wouldn't be a bad idea to protect the area where the wood is touching the soil with gravel. Put a gravel spacer of at least 2 inches in between the wood and the soil. And again, this isn't a video on how to build this type of stairway. If you need more information on that, feel free to put a link or a comment in the comment area, and I'll see what I can do. This is a video on what type of materials you would use for your steps. And of course, in my opinion, concrete is going to be the best way to build this type of stairway. And that can simply be done by building your boxes, filling it up with gravel. And like I said, the gravel's a good method for keeping some of the moisture away from the wood, especially if you have an area where the water is going to drain away safely from the gravel. Wouldn't be uncommon to find a stairway. Let's go back here. Wouldn't be uncommon to have gravel, and if you didn't have any area for the moisture or the water to drain away from at the bottom, it wouldn't be uncommon to find the bottom step rotting and the top and the upper steps perfectly fine, because all the water is going to flow through the gravel until it hits this area here. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to put some type of a drainage system or gravel at the bottom to where the water won't accumulate in the gravel. Hope that makes sense. So again, fill the gravel up a little bit. Give yourself about 3.5, 4 inches. You can always use rebar if you want to. Fill it with concrete and you are done. Here's another one of those crazy stairways I have seen built before. Never built one myself. Remember, I am not an engineer. I do not guarantee that something like this will work. I mean, the last thing I want to do is provide you with something and tell you that you can make this 50 foot long. I cannot guarantee that. Would something like this hold up if it was made out of 4 or 5 steps? I don't think it would be a problem. But when you get to where you're building a stairway that's even this size, it could be. And I would hate to tell you you can build something like this without any engineering on it. Just ain't going to happen. So build this at your own risk. I'm just kind of throwing out an idea, something I think might work. And that, of course, would be bolting some large pieces of lumber together. And you can always put a few more bolts in. This has 2. You could put 3 or 4. You could put metal brackets on the back of it for some extra support. And, of course, you could always put some braces under it. Maybe a wood post under it, the middle of it, for some additional support. That's where it would be the weakest. You build something like this, and it would tend to have problems more in the center, or even a couple of posts might be needed on longer stairways. Now, just simply a 8 by 16. This is 7.5 inches by 15.5 inches. Large piece of lumber, and just bolted together with some all threads. And I think in the diagram here I'm using 1/2 inch all threads. And you can just see there's a washer and a nut at each end. And again, like I said, you might need 1 or 2 more of these depending on the stairway. And of course, you might need larger pieces of lumber for something like this. Instead of something that's 15.5 inches, you might need something that's 16.5 or 17.5 inches. Or even a little longer depending upon the step. 7.5 inches is pushing it for the riser height, and that might not even be something that would be approved on a public stairway. I think a public stairway is 7 inches. Private is 7 3/4. Keep that in mind. I do have other videos on that. You could attach the bottom into the concrete slab with another all thread and some type of an epoxy-based concrete system. And then, of course, you're going to want the nuts and the washers, or the top of the all thread, to be a little lower so that you can put plugs or some type of filler in there. I don't want people to be tripping over anything sticking above the top surface of the step. And again, like I said, throwing this out there, seen it done before, think it'll work, but you'll build this at your own risk. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at the block, what might need to be required. So here's what the all thread might look like. Of course, I don't have an all thread here. This is a bolt design, and all thread is threads all the way down. If you can get a bolt like this, it might work for you just fine. All threads are more common. And of course, bottom of it. Just wanted to give you an idea. Sometimes a few more pictures can help people out. That would be countersunk in a little bit to allow for the width of the washer, top view of it here. And if you drill these holes the same distance, I think I have it here about 1 3/4 inches away from the edge, but yours might need to be different, might need to be a little deeper. And I did the same on the side here. And that everything lines up that way. But you will have to figure out where to drill these holes. And I'm thinking about doing a book. If I do, I will put a link at the end of the video for you, or in the video right around here, if I do make a book on different types of crazy stairs like this that people have built over the years. So that's it for the video. If you like it, hit the thumbs up button. If you don't like it, but you think that you like it, just hit the thumbs up button anyway. And thanks for watching. To learn more about home building and repairs, visit us at our website. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content. See you next time.